Hey there, year 8. This is a video on exercise 1H. We're going to be looking at orders of operation for question 4. Let's zoom in into question 4. I'll pick a couple of questions. Let's do 4A because it's got a power. It's normally easy to start off with. Let's do a negative. C has a negative there. Let's maybe do F because there's a division. And maybe I'll do H because it's the last one. Okay, so we'll do those 4 questions together. So write out your exercise in your exercise book. Right, 4A, the question is 5 times 2 squared divided by 10. Now we're going to follow BODMAS. Okay, now BODMAS says BODMAS. And we know that B stands for brackets, and that's the first thing we look for. Then O, which stands for order, represents the powers or indices, so that's order number 2. And then you've got D and M, which represents division or multiplication, which we say that is order number 3. So that's the third thing we look at. And then addition, subtraction, we say that's add, minus. So that's your last thing that you look for. It's in order 4th position. Okay, so looking at our problem, I can clearly see that there is no brackets. Okay, so no brackets in this question here. So we skip number 1, we go to number 2. Are there any powers? Yes, we do have powers, so we go over here and we say, well, this is what I need to work out first. Again, your layout, make sure it's vertical layout, so I'm going to zoom in. And what we have is, I want you to keep everything the same. So 5 is still there, the times is still there, the division is still there, and the 10 is still there. See what I'm doing? I keep everything the same. The only thing that I'm changing now is I need to figure out the order first. So 2 squared. Now, 2 squared happens to be 2 times 2, but don't confuse that with 2 cubed. 2 cubed is not 2 times 3, it's actually 2 times 2 times 2. Okay, so 2 squared happens to give you 4, but 2 cubed actually gives you 8. Because 2 times 2 is 4, and then 4 times the extra 2 is 8. Okay, so just don't confuse those two there. So what I know is that 2 squared now gives me 4. Okay, so now I've ticked off order, so order's done. Then I go into the next category and I say, well, do I have any division or multiplication? And we can see here, I'm looking for a division multiplication, and it happens that I have both of them, multiplication, division, so that is the next order I work with. But remember, if you have both of them, you have to work from left to right. So here I'm going to zoom in, we're going to go from left to right. So what am I multiplying? I'm multiplying a 5 with a 4. So I'm going to work that out first. Here we go. 5 times 4. Let's work that out. Let's do color coding. So 5 times the 4. Go to your times tables chart if you need, or if you already know, 5 times 4 is 20. Okay, the division sign's there, so I'm going to drop it down, and the 10 is there, so I'm going to drop it down. Can you see how I'm keeping everything in a very vertical manner, but I'm also simplifying as I go. So I did orders first, then I did do multiplication. Okay. Then the next one is, well, what do I have left? I have the division sign, and I'm taking 20 divided by 10. And we know that 20 divided by 10 gives you 2. Okay? So that is the first example. That's question 4A. Let's try C. So working with some negatives. We've got C, we've got brackets 6 minus 4 squared, close brackets, multiplied to brackets negative 2. Okay, so same thing again, we're going to look at BODMAS. So the first thing you look for is, are there any brackets? Well, in the case, yes, we do. We've got a bracket over here, so that's one group, and we also have a bracket over here. So then we focus in both of them. We say, well, what's inside this bracket and what's inside this bracket? Let's do it from left to right. So from left to right, we now look like inside this bracket, I've got a 6 minus 4 squared. That's inside the brackets I need to focus on, right? Inside this bracket, well, there's only a negative 2. In between, remember the times are still there, so I'm going to just write the times there. But what I have now, so notice how I've got rid of the brackets. I'm just focusing on what I have. So this is what I have. I have 6 minus 4 squared. But within that, now that I've done the brackets, the next part is, well, are there any orders? Okay, so in the order, so I'm going back to BODMAS. So I've done brackets. So inside the brackets, I've already wrote it down. 6 minus 4 squared, that's here. And inside the brackets here, I've got negative 2. That's it. So I've done the brackets. Now in the next line, we now need to check the next one. So I've done brackets. Next one's order. So order, do I have any powers? And yes, you should be able to see there is a 4 squared. So that means I keep everything else the same. It's still 6, and this is still a takeaway. This is still a times. This is still a -2, but I need to work out what 4 squared is. Now remember, 4 squared is not 4 times 2. It is 4 times 4, and that gives you 16. So that means I'm rewriting this now as I'm writing 16. So what I've done now is I've done order. Then I look for the next part is, do I have any division or multiplication? And in this case, I do have a multiplication. And what am I multiplying? I'm multiplying the 16 and the -2. Okay, so remember, this is a minus sign. That's not a negative. This is a positive 16 times with a -2. So here, let's calculate this now. So we're doing the multiplication of 16 times -2. And remember in exercise 1G, when you multiply numbers, we multiply numbers first. So 16 times 2, I know it's double of 16 is 32. Then you look at the sign. Now this is a positive 16. That's a -2. So positive, negative. Remember in exercise 1G, if you have a positive times a negative, what do you get? You get an overall negative. Okay? Let's rewrite what we still have. We still have the 6. The 6 is still there. The minus sign is still there. And all I did was I worked out what 16 times -2 was. And we figured it out was -32. All right? So now that I've got up to this step, I've now done multiplication. I'm on to the last step, any addition, subtraction. And yes, I do have a subtraction. This is similar to exercise 1F now. So if you've done 1F, we can read this. This is 6. I'll draw a number line to help you visualize it. 6, we're starting off with the number 6, so 6 is somewhere over here. Let's draw a dot to tell us where we are. And then it says minus. In which direction am I moving when it's minus? Remember, the more left you go, that is minus. The more right you go, that's positive. So when we say minus, we're actually saying go left. Right? So this one's saying go left. And then the negative, in class I told you to think of it as the word opposite. So what's the opposite of left? Okay, so instead of going left, we're meant to go left. So remember, the minus tells us go left, right? But then that negative in front of the 32 says go opposite left, which means you're actually going to the right instead. Yeah, so overall, you're going to go this way. So you're going to go that direction by how many units? You're going to go 32. So 32 in this direction. Now, if we rewrite this, it's very confusing to write minus a negative. So what I tell you in class is to rewrite this as 6 minus a negative. We just realized is we're actually going to the right. But if you're going to the right, which operation is that? That is plus, because I'm going to the right. So this is saying start at 6. So here we go. I'm starting at 6. And we knew that we're going to the right, but if you're going to the right, that's plus. So that's why I wrote plus. And how many units am I going? I'm going 32. Can you see how in my next step, isn't it much easier to read? Rather than doing 6 minus -32, it was easier to understand as 6 plus 32. And 6 plus 32, we know, is 38. You see what I'm doing there? So if I just rub out all the little notations there, this is where we began. We had 6 minus a -32, but the two negatives, also minus and a negative, gets very confusing. So we read what it actually truly means. It just means left, but then opposite of left, which is right. And that makes it easier to read. You just write 6 plus 32, you get 38. Okay, so if you had troubles in this section, you probably want to go back and work on exercise 1F. Make sure you've mastered 1F so that when you go to 1H, you're not going to make mistakes here. Okay? All right, now I'm going to speed up a bit. So let's do question F for F. So 4F here is 3 cubed divided by 9, and you've got plus 1. Right, so again, let's write out BODMAS. I'm going to do BODMAS over here. So BODMAS. Here we go, that's BODMAS. And we again look for brackets first. Are there any brackets? No, no brackets. Are there any powers? Because that's where we're next. And yes, we do. We do have powers. So this is your power. Rewrite the whole equation again. So the division symbol stays there. The 9 stays there. The plus stays there. And the plus 1 stays there, right? All we have to figure out now is let's work out our order. So 3 cubed, what does 3 cubed mean? Remember, 3 cubed does not mean 3 times 3. It's actually 3 times 3 times 3. Okay, you're multiplying it 3 times. That's what 3 cubed means. So let's work it out. 3 times 3, we know that's 9. And then you times 3 again. 9 times 3 gives you 27. Okay, take your time if you weren't sure. Use a calculator or use your back of your book so that you can look at your times tables charts. But 3 cubed, we know is 27. So now I've done order, I've done the power. I'm up to now division, multiplication, and division, multiplication. Do I have any? Yes, I do. I do have a division. Here's your division. What am I dividing by? I'm taking 27 divided by 9. And that gives me 27 divided by 9. Take your time, figure it out. What's 27 divided by 9? 27 divided by 9 is 3. I still have the plus. I still have the 1. See how I keep everything neat and organized? And it's always in a vertical fashion. Then I've done now division, multiplication. So I'm up to now addition, subtraction. Do I have any addition, subtraction? Yes, I do. It is 3 plus 1. 3 plus 1 gives you 4. That's question 4F. Okay? And then lastly now, let's do question 4H. What's 4H? Okay, I'm going to write that down. 4H, you have negative 2 cubed minus 3 divided by negative 3. Okay, let's zoom in. So this one's meant to be the last and tricky one, right? So again, BODMAS, B-O-D-M-A-S. Let's do it again. Any brackets? Yes, I do. Here's my brackets. Well, technically it's indices. That's a power. And here's my brackets. Okay, so it looks like I have to do the brackets first. This one actually is an indices, not just a bracket. But if it helps you, we'll just rewrite that as. So inside this bracket, what do I have? I've got a negative 2. So you write negative 2. Don't forget there's a cube there. All right, and then this is a minus 3. And then that's a divide. What's inside this bracket? You've got a negative 3. I don't like doing it this way because a lot of students get confused what that truly means. So I would tell you to keep the brackets there because it's actually negative 2 cubed. Okay, that's what it actually means. Whereas this one is just negative 3, so I drop down the negative 3. I've done the brackets. Okay, next one is order. So order, yes, I do have an order. It is the power. So here's my power of 3. And it's actually negative 2 cubed. They come together. So what's negative 2 cubed mean? That actually means negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. See how I'm timesing it 3 times? That's 1, 2, 3. Negative 2 multiplied itself 3 times. That's what negative 2 cubed means. So this one you got to take a bit of time to solve here. What is negative 2 times negative 2? So remember exercise 1G, do the numbers first. 2 times 2 is 4. Then let's look at the signs. You've got a negative for this number and a negative for that number. Double negative gives you positive. Don't forget you still have a times here and you're still timesing a negative 2. So again, what's now 4 times negative 2? 4 times negative 2 gives you, 4 times 2 is 8. And again, work out the sign. This is a positive and this is a negative. Positive, negative gives you negative. Okay, so when they say what's negative 2 cubed, it actually is negative 8. So that means here, I now know this is equivalent to negative 8. Minus is still there. This is still a 3. This is still a divide. And that is still negative 3. But I've now ticked off orders and I've ticked off brackets. What's next? I've got division or multiplication. And let's have a look. Do I have any division? Yes, I do. Division's here. So I'm going to be working with positive 3 divided by negative 3. So let's work that out. What is positive 3 divided by negative 3? Again, exercise 1G, do the division first. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. Work out the sign. So this is a positive 3. Don't get confused with that minus. Minus is different to negative, yeah? So I've got a positive 3. This is a negative 3. So positive, negative gives you negative. Let's rewrite everything again. I've got negative 8 here. I still have a minus symbol. And I've now just ticked off division. So division is done. Now I'm up to the last one, addition, subtraction. And this is now exercise 1F, where you have to get used to reading minusing a negative number, right? So remember how I taught you? Minus is left on the continuum. So if I drew the number line for you to see, where's negative 8? Negative 8 is somewhere here, so you're starting at this point. And then it says minus, so you're moving left, right? You're meant to go left, but there's that little negative sign, which means do the opposite of that. So you're actually moving right. Now what's the operation to go right? Is it plus or is it minus? It should be plus. Okay, so that's why we can simplify our problem by rewriting it again. It is negative 8. Now instead of saying minus a negative, it's too confusing for a lot of students. So we say plus. Why did I say plus? Because we're moving to the right. We're starting at negative 8 and I'm moving to the right. So negative 8, go right by how much? We're going by 1. That's it. That's all I'm doing. I'm literally just spelling out what you're seeing on the number line. Now if you think about that, negative 8 plus 1, you're going backwards 1. This number here is not negative 9, it's actually negative 7. Okay, because then it goes negative 6, negative 5, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, all the way back to 0. Yeah, so if you take one step back to the right, it should give you negative 7. So that was exercise 1H, question 4H. That was the trickiest one. You just got to be careful with the negatives and you got to be careful with the powers. But if you follow BODMAS in all of them, I just followed the orders, okay? And you just tick it off as you go. Hopefully that was helpful. Let me know if you need more support.